Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to talk about the use of African language as a medium of teaching and learning. The background of the study, on October 2010, the Department of Education and Training established a commission of inquiry into the Department of Higher Education and Training, which is DHET. Dr. Blade Nzimande, assisted by the ministerial panel, chaired the commission. According to Alexandra 2013-12, the terms of references was the inquiry into making funding, reporting on, and outcomes recommended. The feasibility of the developing and implementing African language into the higher education was addressed as follows. Point 1, the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, based on developing and implementing African language as a medium of instruction, finding and recommendations on various ministerial and the panel task terms have been provided together with relevant education language policy reports and outlines. The multiple effects of higher education in improving African language access and assessment based on the roles played by the government as well as academic staff and students in developing, implementing, and practicing the use of African language in institutions of higher learning and training. The existing language policy for higher education must be reviewed by the Department of Higher Education and Training, together with the advisory panel on the developing of African languages. Particularly, the focus should be on the developing of African languages used at South African higher education institutions and recommendation made on how the policy can be improved. All institutional policy of university must be reviewed by the ministerial panel to the extent to which they are being implemented, especially with regards to the development of African language using and recommendation be made on how they can be improved, either collectively or individually. And various types of interventions should be considered and recommendation be provided on how African language department and university can be strengthened. The research problem of the study. As existing language do not serve as barrier to access and success in the higher education, implementation of African language in higher education as per ministerial panel become a major step. However, the problem lies with the implementing the policy, even though the current higher education language policy in South Africa is an improvement as compared to the language policy under the apartheid government. Higher education language policy intends to develop the use of indigenous African language as medium of teaching and learning to create a multilingual environment in higher education and be used for research and specific outcomes. There is a high demand to implement African language as a medium of teaching and learning for higher education, but with a few researches and scarce lectures, students using different language in the single classroom, compromising the quality of education. higher education, high institutions of learning are argued to outline their strategies on how they are planning to implement their language policy in line with the head language policy and indicate how much time they need to achieve a certain desirable. Universities are required to improve equally and fair use of African languages, and African language should be developed for research and scientific use. The aim of the study is to ensure that higher education institutions discover strategy for the development and implementation of African language used in higher education institution of learning, to describe the challenges hampering the language policy from being implemented and ensuring that there is use of African language as medium of the medium of instruction in higher education to create multilingual environment. To determine whether is full compliance of language policy for higher education by higher education institution, to ascertain whether or not African language can be successfully implemented as medium of instruction in higher education institution. Research questions. What measures institutions are taking to develop the use of African language as medium of teaching and learning, research and scientific languages? What are the challenges hampering the policy implementation? Do language policy of institution of higher education comply with higher education language policy? Can public higher institutions develop the use of African language as medium of instruction? Theoretical framework. As the topic had discussed earlier in the background, problem statement, aim and research. Policy gap be defined as a stable measures of purposive action that must be followed by an actor while dealing with the problem at hand. There may be a matters of concern of using African language in higher education institution, blocking access and success. A policy analyst is expect that basically study the policy and generates ways to improve the basic of the policy maker as well as the presenting information of the policy in order to exercise their judgment. Evaluators of the policy, encouraged by the framework, need to be clear about the problem at hand while motivating the policy as well as the targets, goals, tools, and implementation strategies. The policy analysis is applicable to success of developing and evaluating the policy. Different approaches are employed by the different policies analysis. However, the process of the foundation elements are the same. So what are the things that we have to look at when we implement this a strategy that we need to do while we're dealing with the language, African language as a media on higher education? We can include the policy identification, objective specification, decide and criteria, alternative selection, compare, choose alternative implementation results, and monitor and evaluate. So, is there any question concerning what the part that we have just dealt with, guys? If there is any question, don't be afraid to stop me and ask. I would like to take some questions.
Good evening, viewers of YouTube. I urge you to please hit like and positively comment on this informative lecture. I'm going to take you through what is research, types of research methods, qualitative research, quantitative research, mixed research. Going on the second slide, I'll be telling you what is research, actually presenting to you what research is. Generally, a research involves any formal gathering of data, information, and facts to advance knowledge in a particular field. Research can be defined as a systematic investigative process whose purpose is to increase or revise current knowledge by discovering new facts. Research can be characterized into two groups, one being basic research, which is an inquiry aimed at increasing scientific knowledge. Two, applied research, an effort aimed at using basic research for solving problems or developing new processes, products, or techniques. I'll be outlining types of research methods. One, which is qualitative research, and two being quantitative research. But I will start with qualitative research. Qualitative research is generally more explorative. It is an investigation that 1. Seeks answers to a question, 2. Systematically uses a predefined set of procedures to answer the question, 3. Being collects evidence, produces findings that were not determined in advance, and lastly produces findings that are applicable beyond the immediate boundaries of the study. Please note, while doing your research, it is especially effective in obtaining culturally specific information about the values, opinions, behaviors, and social contexts of particular populations. Qualitative research. There are three most common qualitative methods. One being participants' observation. On this one, an appropriate for collecting data on natural occurring behaviors in their usual context is required. 2. In-depth interviews. Optimal for collecting data on individuals' personal histories, perspectives, and experience, particularly when sensitive topics are being explored. 3. Focus groups. Effective in eliciting data on the cultural norms of a group and in generating broad overviews of issues of concern to the cultural groups or subgroups represented. The qualitative research continues with some advantages. 1. Use of open-ended questions. Participants can respond in their own words rather than forcing them to choose from fixed responses. As quantitative methods do, open-ended questions have the ability to evoke responses that are 1. Meaningful and culturally salient to the participant, 2. Not anticipated by the researcher, 3. Rich and explanatory in nature. The second advantage is allows the researcher the flexibility to probe initial participant responses, that is, to ask why or how questions. The researcher must listen carefully to what participants say, engage with them according to their individual personalities and styles, and use, obviously, probes to encourage them to elaborate on their answers. 3. Advantage being not necessary to collect data from everyone in a community for valid findings. Only a sample, that is a subset, of a population is selected for a study. Direct interaction with individuals on a one-to-one basis, or direct interaction with individuals in a group setting. Data collected through individual interviews, focus groups, observations, action research used to solve an immediate problem or a reflective process of progressive problem solving led by individuals working with others in a team or as part of a community of practice to improve the way they address issues and solve problems. Going to the next slide, quantitative research. This one, beautiful viewers of YouTube, involves collecting and analyzing data collected through polls, questionnaires, and surveys, that is from different sources. The use of computational, statistical, and mathematical tools to derive results. It quantifies the problem and is generally applied to a larger group. The data collection tools are surveys and experiments. Surveys or questionnaires can include interviews, which can be carried out using several different methodologies, including face-to-face, telephonic, online, or computer-assisted interviews. Experiments can provide specific results regarding the cause and effect relationship of several independent or interdependent factors related to a particular problem. Going to quantitative research, the slide continues and the information continues as well. It has about 10 points, which are classified as characteristics, main characteristics. One being the data is usually gathered using structured research instruments. The results are based on larger sample sizes that are representative of the population. The research study can usually be replicated or repeated, given its high reliability. The researcher has a clearly defined research question to which objective answers are sought. All aspects of the study are carefully designed before data is collected. Data are in the form of numbers, statistics, often arranged in tables, charts, figures, or other non-textual forms. Browser can be used to generalize concepts more widely, predict future results, or investigate causal relationships. Researcher uses tools, such as questionnaires or computer software, to collect numerical data. Lastly, the outstanding aim of a quantitative research study is to classify features, count them, and construct statistical models in an attempt to explain what is observed. This one is a versus between the two, between qualitative and quantitative. The objective of qualitative research is to gain an understanding of underlying reasons and motivations. 2, to provide insights into the setting of a problem, generating ideas and/or hypotheses for later quantitative research. The third objective being to uncover prevalent trends in thought and opinion. The objectives and purpose of quantitative research are: 1, to quantify data and generalize results from a sample to the population of interest. 2, to measure the incidence of various views and opinions in a chosen sample. The third one being sometimes followed by qualitative research, which is used to explore some findings further. Sample under qualitative research is usually a small number of non-representative cases, respondents selected to fulfill a given quota. On the quantitative side, usually a large number of cases representing the population of interest, randomly selected respondents. On the side of qualitative research, data collection is utilized on unstructured or semi
Good afternoon. I'm going to present about mixed research. And my fellow colleague, he presented about qualitative versus quantitative. So I'm going to proceed to the next level to present about mixed research. The basic characteristics of mixed research. Point number one. Design can be based on either or both perspectives. Research problem can become research questions or hypotheses based on prior literature, knowledge, experience, or the research process. Sample size vary based on method used. Data collection can involve any technique available to researchers. Interpretation is continual and can influence stages in the research process. Continuing to the next slide. Under mixed research. Why we use mixed methods? The simple answer is to overcome the limitations of a single design. A detailed answer involves the following: to explain and interpret the findings, to explore a phenomenon, to develop and test a new instrument, to serve a theoretical perspective, to complement a strength of a single design, to overcome a weakness of a single design, to address a question at a different level, and to address a theoretical perspective at a different level. This is the detailed answer that involves how to use a mixed method. What are some strengths? Point number one, can be easy to describe and to report. Can be useful when unexpected results arises from prior study. Can help generalize to a degree qualitative data. It can be helpful in designing and validating an instrument. And it can position a research in a transformative framework. Those were some of the strengths of a mixed research. What are some weaknesses of the mixed research? Time required, point number one, resolving discrepancies between different types of data. Some designs generate equal evidence. Can be difficult to describe when to proceed in sequential designs. Little guidance on transformative methods. Those are some of weaknesses of mixed research. Assignment, a research article, a structure of an article. Here we're going to talk about a structure of an article, how to compile an article. Number one, a topic. You must not write more than 15 words. Abstract, point number two, not more than 400 words. You must summarize the problem, methods applied, and what expectations are. Point number three, introduction. Give details about the problem, background, what the focus is, what others have done, what are the loopholes, I mean like missing information. Supply citing, like reference, stuff like that. What is your contribution? What is different about your research? Motivate may include article outlay. Research article layout. Structure of an article. Point number 4, methodology. What tools used? Like experiment, questionnaire, survey, theoretical approach, and etc. Why the tool used? You must justify and write it in the past tense. Point number 5, results and discussion. Give a details on the results obtained and explain thoroughly to convince the reviewers that your findings are worth publishing. Your conclusion, point number 6, very important also. You give detailed summary on what you did. Your results correspond to the literature. What next can be done for future research? Assignment, structure of an article. Acknowledgement, optional. It's optional. You can acknowledge the writers, but it's optional. Indicate financial source or any assistance received. Conflict of interest is also optional. Do all authors agree to the publication or order of names? Point number 7, references. Always check the style of the style required by the journal, and always downloaded a sample for citing and referencing styles. Research article. If it is